The story begins in a bustling Southeast Asian city, where beneath the bright lights and crowded streets lies a terrifying secret. Children have been disappearing one after another, yet no one seems willing to stop the criminals responsible. A fearless journalist named Mattia refuses to stay silent. Determined to expose the powerful child trafficking network, she follows every lead, even as her worried husband, Navin, repeatedly begs her to come home. But Mattia knows that if she turns back now, countless innocent children will remain trapped in this nightmare. Her investigation finally leads her to a hidden warehouse where several kidnapped children are being held. Without wasting a second, she bravely attacks the guards and manages to free one frightened child. For a brief moment, it feels like hope has finally arrived. But that hope is crushed almost instantly. The gang's ruthless leader, Paklung, arrives with his most feared lieutenant, Tak, a deadly warrior armed with a traditional kukri blade and an unmatched skill with the bow. Tak doesn't hesitate for even a second. In a horrifying display of cruelty, he kills the child right in front of Mattia before she can save them. Overpowered and outnumbered, Mattia is captured, and her desperate attempt to expose the truth comes to a tragic end. Months pass. The story now shifts to a quiet man named Wang Wei. Living alone as a widowed handyman, Wei is mute and rarely speaks to anyone, carrying the heavy weight of a painful past. His peaceful life is interrupted when his daughter, Rainey, travels from China to visit him. She wants nothing more than to take her father back home, believing they can finally start over together. But Wei refuses. He knows the city has become far more dangerous than before. Reports of child trafficking are spreading everywhere, and deep inside, he fears Rainey won't be safe if she stays. Although he can't explain everything, he insists that she return to China alone. Rainey mistakes his silence for rejection. Heartbroken and angry, she storms out of the house without looking back. While wandering the streets, she meets a young Chinese boy with a noticeable limp. The boy seems harmless and friendly, earning her trust within minutes. But everything is a trap. The boy is working for a ruthless trafficking gang led by a criminal named Ho. Before Rainey realizes what's happening, she's surrounded, overpowered, and dragged away by the kidnappers. When Wei discovers that his daughter is missing, panic replaces the calm expression on his face. He immediately tracks the traffickers down and launches a brutal attack against them. Despite being alone, he fights with incredible speed and precision, overwhelming several criminals with his bare hands. For a moment, it looks like he'll rescue Rainey, but the traffickers manage to escape, taking Rainey with them before Wei can reach her. Desperate and running out of options, Wei turns to the local police, hoping they'll help him find his daughter. Instead of receiving support, he encounters a corrupt police captain who secretly works for Paklung's trafficking organization. Rather than launching a rescue mission, the captain deliberately shuts down the investigation, making sure the case goes nowhere. As the officers dig into Wei's background, they uncover something unexpected. This quiet, mute handyman isn't an ordinary man at all. He has a mysterious past, one so dangerous that even the police begin to realize they've seriously underestimated the father who's now willing to do absolutely anything to save his daughter. While Wang Wei desperately searches for his daughter, another man is chasing the same nightmare for a completely different reason. Mattia's husband, Navin, refuses to believe that his wife simply vanished without a trace. Ever since her disappearance, he has been following every clue she left behind, convinced that she uncovered something far bigger than anyone imagined. The deeper he digs, the more dangerous his investigation becomes. Eventually, Navin learns about a notorious criminal named Song, a powerful trafficker who secretly operates an underground fight club. On the surface, it's just an illegal arena where people gamble on brutal fights. But beneath it lies something much darker, a marketplace where innocent children are bought and sold like merchandise. Knowing it's his only chance to uncover the truth, Navin disguises himself as a wealthy buyer interested in purchasing trafficked children. Every word he speaks and every move he makes could expose his identity. One mistake, and he'll never leave the building alive. At the very same time, Wang Wei remembers an important clue from one of the traffickers he fought earlier. It points to the exact same fight club. Without hesitation, Wei heads there alone, hoping Rainey is being held somewhere inside. The moment Wei steps into the building, one of the traffickers instantly recognizes him as the man who attacked their gang. Panic spreads through the criminals, and within seconds, dozens of armed men rush toward him. A violent fight erupts. Using nothing but a heavy hammer and his incredible combat skills, Wei tears through wave after wave of attackers. Every swing of the hammer sends another criminal crashing to the ground, leaving the entire fight club in complete chaos. Watching the violence unfold, Song realizes something is terribly wrong. Afraid that Navin might be an undercover investigator connected to the attack, he immediately orders his men to kill him before he can escape. Now surrounded from every direction, Navin has no choice but to fight for his life. He battles through the gang members while Wei continues crushing everyone in his path. Amid the confusion, the two men finally come face to face. Neither recognizes the other. Believing they're working for opposite sides, they launch into a fierce fight against each other. Blow after blow, they test one another's strength, each refusing to back down. But as the fight continues, they begin noticing small pieces of information that don't add up. Slowly, they realize something important. Neither of them is the enemy. Both are searching for loved ones stolen by the very same trafficking organization. The moment the truth becomes clear, the tension between them disappears. Instead of fighting each other, they join forces, knowing they'll have a far better chance of destroying the trafficking network together. Back at their safe location, Navin shares everything Mattia had secretly investigated before disappearing. Combining her evidence with the clues Wei has gathered, they finally uncover the location of one of the traffickers' hidden facilities, Song's ice factory. Believing Rainey and the kidnapped children are imprisoned there, the two waste no time. They storm the factory with relentless determination. What follows is an all-out assault. Criminals pour in from every corner, armed with weapons and determined to stop them. But Wei and Navin fight like men who have nothing left to lose. Every room becomes a battlefield as they overpower one enemy after another. During the chaos, they face Huo, the ruthless trafficker responsible for kidnapping Rainey. Armed with a massive sledgehammer, Huo proves to be one of their toughest opponents. The brutal fight leaves the factory in ruins, but after an exhausting battle, Wei and Navin finally manage to bring him down. Next, they corner Song himself. Terrified and completely outmatched, Song is beaten mercilessly. Yet despite searching every inch of the factory, Wei and Navin make a devastating discovery. The children aren't there. Rainey is gone. Everyone has already been moved. Refusing to let Song escape with more lies, the two men take him prisoner. Desperate for answers, they improvise a brutal interrogation by wiring him to electrical equipment inside the factory. Every painful shock pushes Song closer to breaking. Finally, unable to endure the torture any longer, Song confesses. He reveals that all of the kidnapped children have been transferred to a mysterious place known only as the Snake Pit, a location so secret that very few people even know it exists. Then Song delivers another heartbreaking revelation. According to him, Mattia is dead. The words hit Navin like a knife to the heart. For a brief moment, the determined husband is completely shattered, struggling to accept that the woman he has been searching for all this time may never come home. With no time left to grieve, Wei convinces him to keep moving. Rainey and the remaining children are still alive somewhere, and every second counts. Leaving the broken Song behind, the two men race toward their next destination. But Song's nightmare isn't over. Barely able to stand, he desperately tries to crawl away from the destroyed factory, hoping to escape before anyone returns. Instead, another pair arrives. Pak Lung and his deadly lieutenant, Tak. Knowing Song has failed the organization and revealed its secrets, Pak Lung shows him no mercy. Without hesitation, Tak brutally executes him, silencing the only witness who could expose the trafficking network. Sometime later, Ho regains consciousness after the brutal fight. As he slowly stumbles through the ruined factory, he discovers Song's lifeless body. In that moment, he realizes one terrifying truth. The organization is now eliminating its own people, and the war has only just begun. Meanwhile, deep inside the traffickers' hidden base known as the Snake Pit, the kidnapped children are living through a nightmare. Locked behind fences and constantly watched by armed guards, they have almost lost hope that anyone will ever come to rescue them. But one child refuses to give up. Rainey knows that if they keep waiting, they'll eventually be sold and separated forever. Gathering every ounce of courage she has, she suddenly attacks one of the guards, catching him completely off guard. Her brave act inspires the other children, and within seconds, chaos erupts across the compound. The children scatter in every direction, desperately trying to escape. Some manage to run through narrow paths, while others climb over fences or hide behind abandoned buildings. For a brief moment, freedom feels within reach. Unfortunately, the traffickers react quickly. Armed men chase the frightened children down, beating and dragging most of them back into captivity. The escape attempt begins to collapse, and hope starts to disappear once again. But then, the sound of engines echoes through the compound. Wang Wei and Navin have finally found the Snake Pit. Without wasting a second, they charge straight into the heavily guarded facility. What follows is one of the most intense battles of the entire story. Wei tears through the traffickers with unmatched speed and precision, while Navin fights with everything he has, fueled by the memories of his missing wife and his promise to save every innocent child trapped there. The compound quickly turns into a battlefield. One by one, traffickers are knocked down as Wei and Navin push deeper into the camp. After fighting through countless enemies, Wei finally spots Rainey. Father and daughter rush toward each other and embrace, sharing an emotional reunion after believing they might never meet again. For the first time since Rainey was kidnapped, Wei finally allows himself to feel relief. But their mission isn't over. There are still dozens of terrified children trapped inside. Realizing the world needs to see what's happening, Navin takes out his phone and logs into Mattia's social media account. Using her profile, he begins live-streaming everything: the kidnapped children, the armed traffickers, and the brutal violence taking place inside the Snake Pit. Within minutes, the livestream spreads across the internet. Thousands of people begin watching in shock. The horrifying truth that Mattia had risked, and possibly lost, her life to expose is finally revealed to the public. Citizens flood the authorities with calls, forcing police units to respond. Soon, police vehicles and crowds of concerned civilians surround the snake pit. But even now, corruption stands in the way. The same corrupt police captain, secretly protecting Pak Lung's trafficking network all along, orders his officers to hold back civilians and prevent anyone from interfering. Instead of rescuing the children, he is buying time for the traffickers. As if the situation wasn't dangerous enough, more armed members of the trafficking organization arrive as reinforcements, determined to eliminate Wei and Navin before the truth spreads any further. The battle becomes even more brutal. Surrounded from every side, Wei and Navin fight with everything they have. Every punch, kick, and strike is driven by desperation. They know that if they fall now, the children will lose their only chance at freedom. Seeing the odds against them, Navin turns to Wei and tells him to leave immediately with Rainey. He insists that at least they should escape while he stays behind to hold off the traffickers. Wei hesitates. All he ever wanted was to save his daughter. But before he can make a decision, Rainey grabs his hand. She looks at the frightened children still trapped behind the fences and pleads with her father not to abandon them. She reminds him that every one of those children has a family waiting for them, just as she had been waiting for him. Her words strike Wei deeply. Without saying a single word, he makes his choice. He isn't leaving until every child is safe. At that very moment, one honest officer finally steps forward. Sergeant Yadong, disgusted by the police captain's actions, openly defies his superior's orders. Refusing to let corruption continue, he commands the remaining officers to rescue the children instead of protecting the traffickers. Yadong's courage inspires everyone else. The police officers and ordinary civilians rush into the compound together, risking their own lives to help the terrified children escape. During the chaos, one trafficker corners the young limping boy who had unknowingly helped lure Rainey into the trap. Just as the boy is about to be killed, Sergeant Yadong reacts instantly, firing his weapon and shooting the trafficker before he can pull the trigger. The boy is finally safe. With the combined efforts of Wei, Navin, Yadong, the police, and the brave civilians, the traffickers are completely overwhelmed. Those who survived the fierce battle are arrested, while the rescued children are carried to safety one after another. Outside the snake pit, heartbreaking scenes unfold as parents rush forward, crying tears of relief while embracing children they feared they would never see again. Although exhausted and covered in injuries, Wei silently watches the emotional reunions, knowing that every painful battle was worth it. After the operation ends, the authorities detain Wei and Navin overnight at the local police station while the investigation continues. They are placed inside a holding cell, not as criminals, but as key witnesses to everything that happened. Rainey waits safely at the station, along with the young limping boy, both finally free from the nightmare that had consumed their lives. For the first time in a long while, it seems like justice has finally begun to catch up with the people responsible. But Pak Lung and his deadliest assassin, Tak, are still out there. Just when it seems the nightmare is finally over, the story takes one last, devastating turn. The destruction of the snake pit sends shockwaves through the entire criminal underworld. The trafficking network has been exposed, countless gang members have been arrested, and the police are beginning to close in on the people at the very top. One of those people is Pak Lung. Realizing that the organization is collapsing, Pak Lung's powerful father-in-law, a notorious crime kingpin who helped build the trafficking empire, decides to save himself. Instead of protecting his own son-in-law, he secretly arranges a deal with the corrupt police captain, planning to hand Pak Lung over as the perfect scapegoat. As far as he's concerned, sacrificing one man is a small price to protect the rest of his empire. But Pak Lung isn't the type of man who accepts betrayal. The moment he discovers the plan, he completely loses control. Consumed by rage, he storms into his father-in-law's hideout and unleashes a horrifying massacre. One after another, the kingpin's armed bodyguards are brutally cut down. His father-in-law desperately tries to negotiate, but Pak Lung shows absolutely no mercy. Within minutes, the crime boss and all of his loyal aides lie dead. The corrupt police captain also arrives, believing he's about to complete the deal. Instead, he becomes another victim. Pak Lung executes him without hesitation, wiping out everyone who dared to betray him. But in the middle of his uncontrollable rampage, tragedy strikes. His own pregnant wife tries to stop the bloodshed. Blinded by anger and no longer able to distinguish friend from foe, Pak Lung accidentally kills her as well. For a brief moment, even he seems frozen by what he's done. But guilt quickly turns into even greater madness. Having lost everything, Pak Lung decides that if his world is going to burn, he'll make sure everyone else burns with it. With only his deadliest lieutenant, Tak, remaining by his side, Pak Lung heads straight for the police station, determined to kill every person connected to the destruction of his organization. Meanwhile, Wei and Navin are spending the night inside a jail cell after the rescue operation, while Rainey and the limping boy remain safely inside the station under police protection. No one expects what's about to happen. Suddenly, The station comes under attack. Pak Lung and Tak crash through the entrance like unstoppable forces of destruction. Officers barely have time to react before bullets fly and brutal hand-to-hand combat erupts throughout the building. One by one, the policemen are slaughtered. Hallways become battlefields as terrified officers desperately try to hold the line, but the attackers cut through them with terrifying efficiency. Sergeant Yadong bravely fights back, refusing to surrender even after witnessing his fellow officers fall around him. Despite putting up a fierce resistance, he is eventually overwhelmed and left severely injured, barely able to continue fighting. The sounds of gunfire and explosions echo through the station. Realizing the attack is targeting everyone inside, Wei and Navin break free from their holding cell and immediately rush toward Rainy and the limping boy. Once again, protecting the children becomes their only priority. As they reach the main hall, they finally come face to face with Pak Lung and Tak. The final battle begins. Every punch lands with devastating force. Every strike could be the last. The station is reduced to chaos as furniture shatters, walls crumble, and bodies are thrown across the room. In the middle of the brutal fight, Tak finally reveals the truth that Navin has been searching for since the very beginning. Without a hint of remorse, he admits that he was the one who murdered Mattia. The confession hits Navin like a thunderbolt. The hope he had been clinging to disappears instantly, replaced by overwhelming grief and uncontrollable rage. Driven by heartbreak, Navin throws himself into the fight with everything he has. At that exact moment, another familiar face unexpectedly enters the battlefield. After surviving the earlier fight at the ice factory, he has come seeking revenge, not only against Wei and Navin, but against Pak Lung as well for abandoning everyone. The battle becomes complete chaos. Three deadly forces collide at once, each fighting for survival. Amid the confusion, Tak manages to stab Navin multiple times. The wounds are fatal. Even as his strength begins to fade, Navin refuses to surrender. Summoning every last bit of determination, he grabs Tak one final time and, in a shocking act of desperation, bites directly into Tak's neck. The attack proves fatal. Tak collapses beside him, dying from his injuries. Navin has finally avenged Mattia, but the victory comes at the ultimate price. Nearby, Pak Lung turns his attention toward Ho. Seeing him as yet another traitor, Pak Lung attacks without mercy, overpowering him in a savage fight before killing him where he stands. Now only Wei remains. Exhausted, battered, and fighting through his injuries, Wei faces Pak Lung alone. The two men unleash everything they have left. Pak Lung's relentless attacks eventually overpower Wei, knocking him unconscious after an incredibly brutal exchange. But Pak Lung has underestimated him. Before collapsing, Wei had already landed several devastating blows directly to Pak Lung's head, strikes powerful enough to cause severe internal injuries. As Wei lies motionless on the floor, Rainy and the limping boy step forward. Terrified but determined, they pick up weapons and stand between Pak Lung and Wei, ready to protect the man who sacrificed everything for them. Pak Lung slowly rises to finish the fight. He takes one step, then another. But the damage from Wei's final blows is too great. His vision begins to blur. His body loses balance. Without warning, the concussions finally overwhelm him. Pak Lung stumbles forward, collapses to the ground, and never gets back up. The ruthless kingpin who destroyed countless innocent lives dies alone on the floor, defeated not by fear, but by the courage and determination of the people he believed he could never break. With Pak Lung and Tak finally gone, the trafficking empire comes to a permanent end. The nightmare that had claimed so many innocent lives is finally over, though not without heartbreaking sacrifices that none of the survivors will ever forget. 1 month later, peace has finally returned. The brutal trafficking network that had terrorized countless families has been destroyed, and for the first time in a long while, the survivors are given a chance to begin healing. Although justice has been served, the scars left behind can never truly disappear. On a quiet morning by the sea, Wei, Rainy, the young limping boy, and Sergeant Yadong gather together for one final farewell. Standing silently at the edge of the ocean, they carry an urn containing Navin's ashes. The man who had risked everything to find his wife, who fought until his very last breath to save innocent children, had paid the ultimate price. With heavy hearts, they slowly scatter his ashes into the endless sea. As the wind carries the ashes across the water, everyone stands in respectful silence, remembering the sacrifices that brought them to this moment. They also take a moment to honor Mattia, whose fearless investigation had exposed the trafficking network in the first place. Although she never lived to see justice, her courage became the spark that eventually destroyed the entire criminal empire. Without her determination, countless children might never have been rescued. For a few moments, no one says a word. The only sound is the gentle rhythm of the waves, as if the ocean itself is paying tribute to those who gave everything to protect others. The scene then flashes back to one quiet moment inside the police jail, shortly before the final battle. After everything they had gone through together, Navin realized there was still one thing he didn't know about the man who had become his closest ally. Throughout their journey, everyone had simply called him Wei. Looking at him with a faint smile, Navin quietly asks him what his real name is. For the very first time in the entire story, the silent handyman finally chooses to answer. Breaking the silence that had defined him for so long, he softly tells Navin his true name. It's a small moment, but an incredibly meaningful one. After carrying the burden of his painful past for so many years, Wei finally allows someone to truly know who he is. It marks the beginning of his emotional healing and shows that he is finally ready to leave his old life behind. The story then returns to the present. After saying their final goodbyes, Wei gently takes Rainey's hand as they walk away from the shoreline together. This time, there is no distance between father and daughter. No fear. No silence filled with regret. For the first time in years, they are finally together as a family. As they continue walking, Wei begins telling Rainey the story of his own life, the painful memories he had kept hidden for so long, the mistakes he had carried in silence, and everything that had shaped him into the man he had become. The little girl listens quietly, knowing that although the road ahead won't be easy, they will face it together. And with that hopeful new beginning, the film comes to a powerful and emotional close, reminding us that while evil may leave deep scars, love, courage, and sacrifice can still light the path toward a better future.